Captain Sarah Chun pressed her face against the cold metal of the ventilation shaft, watching the slave auction below through the narrow grate. The stench of fear and desperation rose from the crowded platform where dozens of beings from across the galaxy stood in chains. Her jaw tightened as she counted the guards, 12 heavily armed Korthak mercenaries surrounding the platform, their reptilian scales gleaming under the harsh artificial lights of the space station. "This is insane, Sarah," came the whispered voice through her comm unit. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her second-in-command aboard the human cargo vessel New Horizon, sounded nervous. "We're supposed to be delivering medical supplies to the outer colonies, not playing hero on some backwater trading post." Sarah adjusted her position, careful not to make noise. 3 months ago, she would have agreed with Marcus. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was still the new kid on the block, barely 50 years since first contact, still struggling to establish trade routes and diplomatic relations with the hundreds of alien species that made up the Galactic Confederation. Smart humans kept their heads down, delivered their cargo, and minded their own business. But that was before Sarah had seen her first slave auction on the mining world of Zirian Prime, before she had watched a Thraxian mother sold away from her children, before she had learned that while the Confederation officially banned slavery, it turned a blind eye to what happened in the Outer Rim territories where profit mattered more than principles. "Target acquired," Sarah whispered into her comm, focusing on a small figure near the back of the platform. The child couldn't be more than 10 years old by human standards, though with alien physiology, it was hard to tell. What caught Sarah's attention wasn't the child's age, but the way the other slaves seemed to defer to her despite her small size. Even in chains, even terrified, the little alien girl carried herself with a dignity that spoke of noble birth. "Sarah, whatever you're thinking, don't," Marcus pleaded. "We can't save them all. You know that." He was right, and that truth burned in Sarah's chest like acid. But she had made a promise to herself after Zirian Prime. Never again would she walk away when she had the power to act. The New Horizon might be a cargo ship, but Sarah had served 10 years in the Earth Defense Force before taking this job. She knew how to fight, and, more importantly, she knew how to win. The auctioneer, a bloated hut-like creature whose name Sarah didn't know and didn't care to learn, gestured toward the child with one of his forearms. Next item, young Zephyrian female, approximately 8 cycles old, trained in basic service protocols. Bidding starts at 500 galactic credits. Zephyrian. Sarah's blood ran cold. She had read about the Zephyrians in the cultural briefings that all human traders were required to study. An ancient race known for their advanced technology and mysterious powers, they had supposedly vanished from the galaxy over 1,000 years ago. Most experts believed they were extinct. Apparently, the experts were wrong. 1,000 credits, called out a voice from the crowd below. Sarah shifted to get a better view and saw a tall, insectoid creature raise one of its many arms. A slave trader from the looks of it, probably planning to sell the child to some wealthy collector who would pay a fortune for such a rare prize. 1,500, countered another bidder, this one a massive, bear-like alien whose species Sarah didn't recognize. The child, the Zephyrian girl, stood perfectly still as the bids escalated around her. But Sarah could see the fear in her large, luminous eyes that seemed to shift color from blue to silver in the strange light. Fear, and something else. Resignation. As if she had already accepted whatever terrible fate awaited her. "Not on my watch," Sarah muttered, pulling out her plasma cutter. The tool was designed for emergency hull repairs, but it would work just fine for cutting through a metal grate. "Sarah, please," Marcus tried one more time. "Think about this logically. We're one ship with a crew of 6. This station has over 3,000 inhabitants, most of them armed. Even if we could somehow rescue that one child, where would we go? Every bounty hunter in the sector would be hunting us." Sarah paused in her cutting, considering his words. Marcus wasn't wrong about the odds. The New Horizon was fast for a cargo vessel, but it wasn't a warship. They had basic defensive systems and a small armament for dealing with pirates, nothing that could stand up to a real military response. And if they were caught harboring stolen property, which is how the law would see a rescued slave, they would all end up in prison or worse. But as Sarah watched the bidding war continue below, as she saw the terror in that child's eyes, she realized that some things were more important than playing it safe. Marcus, prep the ship for immediate departure, she ordered, resuming her cutting. And, remember that emergency medical kit we're carrying for the Centauri colony? I have a feeling we're about to have a patient. You're seriously going to do this, aren't you? Sarah felt the grate give way under her plasma cutter. I became a cargo hauler to see the galaxy and help people, Marcus. Today, I get to do both. She lowered herself through the opening, dropping silently into the shadows behind the auction platform. The crowd was focused on the bidding, which had now reached 3,000 credits. Sarah crept closer, studying the layout. The guards were positioned to watch the crowd, not expecting trouble from behind the platform. Their mistake. Sarah had brought her sidearm, a compact human-made pulse pistol that could drop most humanoid species with a single shot. But she had also brought something that most aliens had never seen before, a human military smoke grenade. Earth technology might be primitive by galactic standards, but sometimes primitive was exactly what you needed. She pulled the pin and tossed the grenade into the center of the platform. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Thick, choking smoke billowed out in all directions, sending the crowd into a panic. Aliens of a dozen different species stumbled over each other trying to escape, their various forms of vision useless in the dense cloud. Shouts and screams echoed through the chamber as the carefully organized auction dissolved into chaos. Sarah moved quickly, her enhanced vision goggles cutting through the smoke like it wasn't there. She reached the Zephyrian child just as two Korthak guards converged on their position, their weapons raised but their aim uncertain in the confusion. "Stay behind me," Sarah told the girl in what she hoped was universal basic, grabbing the chains that bound the child's small wrists. Another advantage of human technology, their plasma cutters could slice through most alloys like butter. The first guard opened fire, his energy weapon sending bolts of superheated plasma through the smoke. Sarah dove to one side, pulling the child with her, and returned fire with her pulse pistol. The human weapon spat blue energy, catching the Korthak in the center of his scaled chest, and sending him crashing into the auction platform. The second guard was smarter, using his enhanced hearing to track Sarah's movement. She heard his heavy footsteps circling around, trying to flank her position. Sarah grabbed a piece of debris from the platform and hurled it to her right, then immediately moved left as the guard's weapon fire followed the sound. She came up behind him like a ghost, pressing her pistol to the back of his head. "Sleep tight," she whispered, pulling the trigger. The Korthak dropped like a stone. "This way," Sarah said to the Zephyrian girl, who had watched the entire fight with wide eyes but hadn't made a sound. The child nodded and followed as Sarah led her toward the maintenance corridor she had mapped out earlier. Behind them, more guards were converging on the platform, but the smoke was still thick enough to cover their escape. Sarah's comm unit crackled with Marcus's voice. "Sarah, whatever you just did has stirred up a hornet's nest. I'm seeing security teams mobilizing all over the station." "Good thing we're not sticking around for the party," Sarah replied, helping the Zephyrian girl climb into the maintenance shaft. "How long until we can launch?" 2 minutes if we skip the pre-flight checks." "Skip them." Sarah followed the child into the shaft, sealing the entrance behind them. The maintenance tunnels ran throughout the station like arteries, connecting every major system. She had spent 2 hours studying the schematics before making her move, mapping out 3 different escape routes in case something went wrong. As they crawled through the narrow passage, Sarah couldn't help but notice how the Zephyrian girl moved. Despite her small size and obvious fear, she navigated the tight space with an almost supernatural grace, as if she could sense exactly where to put her hands and feet for maximum efficiency. Her movements were so fluid that Sarah had to work to keep up. "What's your name?" Sarah asked as they reached a junction in the tunnel system. The girl paused and looked back at her with those strange, color-shifting eyes. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear, with an accent unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. "I am called Lyralii. And you are human?" "That's right. My name is Sarah Chun. I'm going to get you out of here." "Why?" The question was simple, but Sarah could hear layers of meaning behind it. Why would a stranger risk their life? Why would someone from a species barely known in this part of the galaxy interfere in something that didn't concern them? Sarah thought about all the easy answers she could give. Because it was the right thing to do. Because nobody deserved to be sold like property. Because she had made a promise to herself after Zirian Prime. All of those were true, but none of them captured the real reason. Because that's what humans do, she said finally. We help each other. All of us. Even when it's dangerous. Lyralii stared at her for a long moment, those luminous eyes seeming to look right through her. Then, surprisingly, the child smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fragile, but it transformed her entire face. I have heard stories of humans, Lyralii said. My grandmother told me that your species was different from the others, that you had something she called impossible hope. I did not understand what she meant until now. They emerged from the maintenance tunnels near the docking bay where the New Horizon waited. Sarah could see Marcus through the bridge windows, frantically working the pre-flight sequence. Lights flashed all over the station as security teams mobilized, but they hadn't found the ship yet. Almost there, Sarah told Lyralii, leading her across the docking bay toward the cargo ramp. But, as they reached the halfway point, a squad of 6 Korthak guards rounded the corner, their weapons already raised. Stop right there, human, their leader barked. Return the property, and surrender yourself for questioning. Sarah stepped in front of Lyralii, her hand moving to her pistol. 6 against 1 weren't good odds, even with the element of surprise. But she had learned long ago that sometimes you had to play the hand you were dealt, no matter how bad it looked. The child isn't property, Sarah said calmly. She's a person, and I'm not surrendering her to anyone. The squad leader, a veteran Korthak with scars across his scaled face, smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Brave words from a dead human. Your species' reputation for foolish heroics precedes you. But heroics won't save you from plasma fire. Sarah was about to draw her weapon when something extraordinary happened. Lyralii stepped out from behind her, raising her small hands in a gesture that seemed both defensive and commanding. The air around them began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. You will not harm her, the child said, and her voice carried an authority that seemed impossible for someone so young. The Korthak leader laughed. A Zephyrian whelp thinks she can threaten us? Your people are extinct, little one. Whatever powers you once had died with your empire. Lyralii's eyes flashed, shifting from blue to silver to something that looked almost like starlight. My people are not extinct, and our powers are not gone. They merely sleep. The shimmer in the air intensified, and, suddenly, Sarah felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the very atoms around them were vibrating at a frequency just beyond perception. The Korthak guards shifted nervously, their weapons wavering as they sensed something they didn't understand. Lyralii, Sarah said softly, not wanting to break whatever was happening but knowing they needed to move. We need to go? Now. The child nodded, but didn't lower her hands. Yes, but first, they must understand. What happened next would be burned into Sarah's memory for the rest of her life. The air around Lyralii exploded with light, not the harsh glare of artificial illumination, but something pure and clean that seemed to carry the warmth of a distant star. The light washed over the Korthak guards like a gentle wave, and, as it touched them, their expressions changed from aggression to wonder. For just a moment, Sarah could see what the guards were seeing reflected in their eyes. Not a frightened slave child, but something magnificent and ancient and impossibly powerful. A reminder of what the Zephyrians had once been, before they vanished into legend. The light faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Lyralii swaying on her feet from exhaustion. But the guards remained frozen, their weapons lowered, staring at the child with something approaching reverence. Sarah didn't waste the opportunity. She scooped Lyralii into her arms and ran for the ship, her boots clanging against the metal deck plating of the docking bay. Behind her, she could hear the guards beginning to stir, confusion and alarm replacing their momentary paralysis. Marcus, she shouted into her comm as they reached the cargo ramp. We're coming in hot. The ramp was already lowering as Sarah reached it, Marcus's voice crackling through the ship's speakers. All aboard. Launching in 10 seconds. Sarah carried Lyralii up the ramp and into the cargo hold just as the first energy bolts began to streak past them. The ship's automated systems sealed the ramp as the engines roared to life, lifting the New Horizon off the docking platform and toward the freedom of open space. Through the cargo hold's small viewport, Sarah watched the trading station shrink behind them, its lights growing dimmer until it was just another star in the vast darkness. She had done it. Against all odds, against all logic, she had actually done it. But, as she looked down at the exhausted Zephyrian child in her arms, Sarah realized that rescuing Lyralii from the slave auction might have been the easy part. Now she had to figure out what to do with a little girl who could make hardened mercenaries stop in their tracks with nothing but light and willpower. A little girl who, according to every database in the galaxy, belonged to a species that had been extinct for over 1,000 years. A little girl whose true identity, Sarah was beginning to suspect, might be far more important than anyone could possibly imagine. The medical bay of the New Horizon had never been designed for Zephyrian physiology, but Dr. Elena Vasquez was doing her best to adapt. Sarah watched from the doorway as the ship's medic ran a scanner over Lyralii's small form, frowning at the readings on her diagnostic display. "Her vital signs are unlike anything I've ever seen," Elena muttered, adjusting the scanner's settings. "Heart rate is elevated, but her blood chemistry shows none of the stress indicators I'd expect from someone who's been through what she has. It's almost like her body is designed to handle trauma better than most species." Lyralii lay quietly on the examination table, those strange color-shifting eyes following Elena's movements with calm intelligence. She had barely spoken since coming aboard the ship 6 hours ago, answering Sarah's questions with polite nods or single-word responses. But Sarah could sense that the child was constantly observing, analyzing everything around her with the intensity of someone much older. "Is she injured?" Sarah asked, stepping into the medical bay. They had been traveling through hyperspace for the past few hours, putting distance between themselves and the trading station, but Sarah knew their safety was only temporary. By now, every bounty hunter and mercenary outfit in 3 sectors would be looking for them. Physically, a few minor cuts and bruises, nothing serious. But Sarah, Elena lowered her voice, glancing at Lyralii to make sure the child wasn't listening. "I've been comparing her genetic markers to the database. These readings don't match any known species." "Because she's Zephyrian," Sarah said. "I told you that." "No, you don't understand. According to every scientific database we have access to, Zephyrians never existed. There are no genetic records, no biological samples, no archaeological evidence of their physiology. It's like they were completely erased from galactic history." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had assumed that the Zephyrians were simply a rare species that had gone into hiding or died out naturally. But Elena was suggesting something much more disturbing, that their entire existence had been deliberately wiped from the records. "Elena," came Marcus's voice over the ship's intercom. "Sarah, you both need to get up here. Now." Sarah and Elena exchanged concerned glances before hurrying toward the bridge, leaving Lyralii to rest in the medical bay. As they climbed the narrow stairs to the ship's command center, Sarah could hear the tension in Marcus's voice. Whatever he had discovered, it wasn't good news. The bridge of the New Horizon was cramped but efficient, designed for a crew of 6, but currently operated by only 4. Marcus stood at the communications console, his face pale as he stared at the incoming message display. Chief Engineer Tom Bradley and Navigator Lisa Park flanked him, both looking equally disturbed. "What's the situation?" Sarah asked, moving to stand beside Marcus. "We've been monitoring galactic news feeds since we left the station," Marcus explained, his fingers dancing over the control panel. "The story of our little rescue operation has already spread across half the sector. But, Sarah, there's something else. Something that changes everything." He activated the main display, showing a news broadcast from one of the major galactic networks. The anchor, a dignified Altarian with silver scales and multiple eyes, spoke in the measured tones of someone delivering momentous news. "Confirmed by Imperial sources that the missing heir to the Zephyrian throne has been located after more than 2 years in captivity. Princess Lyralii Starweaver, daughter of Empress Zura the Eternal, was reportedly rescued from slave traders by unknown parties in the Outer Rim territories." Sarah felt the world tilt sideways. Princess, Empress. The frightened child in their medical bay wasn't just any Zephyrian. She was royalty. And if the Zephyrians still had an empire, that meant they weren't extinct at all. There's more, Marcus said grimly, switching to another news feed. This one showed what appeared to be a massive fleet of ships unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Organic curves mixed with crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them. The Zephyrian Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace 3 hours ago, the news anchor continued. This marks the first confirmed appearance of Zephyrian military forces in over 1,000 years. Empress Zara has issued a galaxy-wide proclamation demanding the immediate return of her daughter. How big is that fleet? Sarah asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Tom Bradley, who had spent 20 years in the Earth Defense Force before joining the New Horizon, whistled softly. I count at least 200 capital ships, maybe more. Sarah, each of those vessels is the size of a space station. The combined firepower there could probably crack a planet. And they're all looking for us, Lisa added helpfully. The bounty on our ship just went from 10,000 credits to 10 million. Every mercenary, bounty hunter, and pirate in the galaxy is going to be hunting us. Sarah sank into the captain's chair, trying to process what she had learned. In the space of a few hours, her simple rescue mission had become an interstellar incident that could potentially start a war. The child she had saved from slavery was apparently one of the most important people in the galaxy. Captain, came a small voice from the bridge entrance. They all turned to see Lyralii, standing in the doorway, having apparently heard enough of their conversation to understand the situation. I must speak with you. Alone. Sarah looked at her crew, then nodded toward the door. Give us a few minutes, she said. Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but Sarah cut him off with a look. Whatever Lyralii had to say, she deserved to say it without an audience. When they were alone on the bridge, Lyralii moved to stand in front of Sarah's chair. Despite her small size, there was something regal about her posture, a dignity that spoke of noble birth and careful training. But there was also something else, a sadness that seemed far too old for someone so young. You know who I am now, Lyralii said. It wasn't a question. Princess Lyralii Starweaver, Sarah confirmed. Daughter of Empress Zara the Eternal. Though I have to admit, I'm still trying to understand what that means. Lyralii was quiet for a long moment, staring out the bridge's main viewport at the swirling colors of hyperspace. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made Sarah's heart ache. My people have been in exile for over 1,000 years, Captain Chun. We retreated to the far edges of the galaxy after we made a terrible mistake. A mistake that cost billions of lives and nearly destroyed the very fabric of space itself. What kind of mistake? Sarah asked gently. We tried to transcend, Lyralii said simply, to become something more than physical beings. We had the technology, the knowledge, the power. But we were arrogant. We thought we could control forces that were meant to remain untouched. She turned to face Sarah, and for a moment those color-shifting eyes seemed to hold the depth of eternity. The experiment failed. Our home system was consumed by what your scientists would call a controlled black hole, though it was anything but controlled. Billions died, and the survivors fled to the void between galaxies, where we have remained ever since. But you're here now, Sarah pointed out. Both you and your mother's fleet. Because the exile is ending, Lyralii said. The effects of our experiment have finally stabilized. The danger has passed, and my mother has decided that it is time for the Zephyrian Empire to reclaim its place in the galaxy. Sarah felt a chill at the implications. Reclaim its place from whom? From everyone who took what was ours while we were gone, Lyralii said quietly. From the species who settled our former territories. From the governments who declared us extinct and divided our resources among themselves. From the traders who hunt our scattered people for sport. Like the slave auction, Sarah realized. Yes, I was not the first of my people to be captured and sold. There are others, scattered across the galaxy, most of them children who were born in exile and know nothing of our true heritage. My mother has been searching for them, gathering them back to the fleet. I was investigating reports of Zephyrian slaves when I was captured. The way she said investigating made Sarah suspect that the young princess had been doing something considerably more dangerous than simple reconnaissance. But before she could ask about it, Lyralii continued. My mother will be here soon, the child said. Her fleet is faster than anything else in the galaxy. When she arrives, she will want to thank you for saving me. That's good, right? Sarah asked, though something in Lyraliai's tone suggested it wasn't quite that simple. Captain Chun, Sarah, you must understand something about my mother. She is over 3,000 years old. She has ruled the Zephyrian Empire through war, exile, and isolation. She has seen species rise and fall like waves on a beach. And she has very little patience for what she considers the younger races who inherited the galaxy in our absence. Sarah was beginning to see where this was going. She doesn't like aliens. Specifically, she doesn't like humans. It is not personal, Lyraliai said quickly. But humans are new, unpredictable. Your species has existed for less than a galactic heartbeat, yet you have spread across dozens of systems and inserted yourselves into galactic politics with remarkable speed. Some of my mother's advisors view humanity as a potential threat to Zephyrian hegemony. Great, Sarah muttered. So when your mother gets here, she's either going to reward me or vaporize me. She will reward you, Lyraliai said with certainty. But the reward she offers may not be what you expect, and it may come with conditions you do not wish to accept. Before Sarah could ask what that meant, the ship's proximity alarms began to sound. Marcus's voice crackled over the intercom. Sarah, we've got company. A lot of company. They just appeared out of nowhere, right in front of us. Sarah and Lyraliai rushed to the main viewport, where an impossible sight awaited them. The New Horizon had dropped out of hyperspace, though Sarah hadn't felt the transition. And surrounding them in perfect formation were 12 of the most beautiful starships Sarah had ever seen. The vessels were clearly Zephyrian in design, their organic curves and crystalline structures catching and reflecting the light of nearby stars in patterns that seemed almost alive. Each ship was easily 10 times the size of the New Horizon, their hulls gleaming with what appeared to be living metal that shifted and flowed like liquid mercury. How did they find us? Marcus asked over the comm. We've been changing course every hour, using random jumps through hyperspace. It should have been impossible to track us. They followed me, Lyraliai said simply. There is a connection between my mother and myself. It cannot be broken by distance or time. The largest of the Zephyrian ships, a magnificent vessel that seemed to be built from crystallized starlight, moved closer to the New Horizon. Sarah could see intricate patterns carved into its hull, designs that seemed to shift and change as she watched. It was beautiful and alien and absolutely terrifying. Incoming transmission, Lisa reported from the navigation station. It's definitely not using any standard galactic communication protocols. Put it through, Sarah ordered, straightening her uniform jacket. She had met kings and presidents and corporate executives during her time in the Defense Force, but she had never had to face an empress who commanded fleets that could crack planets. The main display flickered, and suddenly, Sarah was staring at the most magnificent being she had ever seen. Empress Zara the Eternal looked like Lyraliai might in several thousand years, tall, graceful, with the same color-shifting eyes and flowing hair that seemed to move in a breeze that existed only around her. But where Lyraliai was gentle and somewhat fragile, Zara radiated power and authority that made the very air around her seem to crackle with energy. When the Empress spoke, her voice carried the weight of millennia and the command of someone who had never been denied anything she truly wanted. Captain Sarah Chun of the vessel New Horizon, she said. And somehow Sarah knew that Zara was speaking perfect English despite the fact that her lips were moving in what appeared to be an entirely different language. I am Empress Zara Starweaver, eternal ruler of the Zephyrian Empire, guardian of the void between stars, and mother to the child you have rescued. I have come to express my gratitude. Sarah stepped forward, acutely aware that her small cargo ship was surrounded by enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. Your Majesty, she said, hoping she was using the right form of address. I'm honored to meet you. Your daughter is safe and unharmed. Yes, Zara said, and for just a moment her imperial mask slipped, revealing the relief and love of a mother who had found her missing child. Lyraliai has told me what you did, how you risked your life and the lives of your crew to save someone you had never met, how you acted without thought of reward or recognition. simply because it was the right thing to do. Any decent person would have done the same, Sarah said. Zara's expression shifted, and Sarah caught a glimpse of something that might have been amusement. Captain Chun, I have lived for over 3 millennia. I have observed hundreds of species across thousands of worlds. I can assure you that what you did was anything but common. Most beings, when faced with a choice between personal safety and moral action, choose safety. Then, most beings haven't spent enough time around humans, Sarah replied. We're kind of stubborn that way. This time, Zara did smile. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and somehow more approachable despite the cosmic power she wielded. Indeed, I am beginning to understand why my daughter speaks so highly of your species. Your Majesty, Sarah said, if I may ask, what happens now? I mean, we're honored to have helped, but I imagine you have important things to do that don't involve a small cargo ship. Ah, Zara said, and suddenly, the Imperial mask was back in place. That brings me to why I wish to speak with you personally, Captain Chen. You have performed a great service for the Zephyrian Empire. By our ancient laws and customs, such service must be properly rewarded. Sarah felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. What kind of reward? Citizenship in the Zephyrian Empire, Zara said, as if she were offering Sarah the greatest gift imaginable. A noble title and lands on one of our core worlds. A position in my personal fleet with authority over a dozen systems and the resources to ensure your family wants for nothing for the next 1,000 years. It was, Sarah had to admit, an incredible offer. But there was something in Zara's tone that suggested it wasn't really an offer at all. And if I refuse? Sarah asked. Zara's smile didn't waver, but her eyes grew cold. Captain Chun, in my experience, beings do not refuse the honor of joining the Zephyrian Empire. Such a refusal would be unprecedented. Sarah glanced at Lyralii, who was standing slightly behind her mother's image on the display. The young princess was trying to communicate something with her eyes, but Sarah couldn't quite read the message. Your Majesty, Sarah said carefully, I appreciate the honor you're offering, but I already have a job, a crew, and responsibilities to people who are counting on me. I can't just abandon all of that. Your crew would be welcome as well, of course, Zara said. As for your other responsibilities, I'm certain they can be transferred to someone else. The Confederation has millions of cargo captains, but there is only one human who has earned the personal gratitude of the Zephyrian Empire. Sarah was beginning to understand the position she was in. Zara wasn't really offering her a choice. She was giving her a chance to accept the inevitable gracefully. The Empress had just revealed herself to the galaxy after 1,000 years of exile. She couldn't afford to have the story of her daughter's rescue diminished by suggestions that the rescuer had refused to be properly honored. But Sarah Chun had not become a starship captain by backing down from difficult situations. Your Majesty, she said, I need time to consider your generous offer, and I need to discuss it with my crew. For a moment, Zara's expression hardened, and Sarah caught a glimpse of the power that could command starfleets and reshape worlds. Then, surprisingly, the Empress laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in a gentle breeze. Captain Chun, you continue to surprise me. Very well. You have 12 of your hours to make your decision. I will await your answer. But, understand this, when that time has passed, I will require a response. One way or another. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the New Horizon in tense silence. Sarah stared at the blank display for a long moment before turning to face her crew, all of whom had gathered on the bridge during the conversation. Well, Marcus said finally, this is a hell of a situation. She wants to make us all Zephyrian nobles, Tom said wonderingly. Do you have any idea how much a noble title in an advanced empire is worth? We'd never have to work again. We'd also never be free again, Lisa pointed out. Did you see the way she looked when Sarah asked about refusing? That wasn't the face of someone who takes no for an answer. Sarah looked at Lyralii, who had remained quiet throughout the exchange. What do you think, Princess? Any advice for a human who seems to have gotten in over her head? Lyralii stepped forward, and, when she spoke, her voice was soft but urgent. My mother is not evil, Captain Chun, but she is focused. For 1,000 years, she has dreamed of nothing but the return of our empire to its former glory. She sees your rescue of me as a sign, proof that there are still beings in the galaxy who understand honor and duty and sacrifice. But, Sarah prompted, sensing there was more. But, she also sees you as a useful tool, Lyralii said sadly. A human hero who saved a Zephyrian princess. It would make a wonderful story for the galactic media, proof that the returning empire is benevolent and worthy of respect. She needs that story, Sarah, and she needs you to be willing to tell it. And if I'm not willing, then she will find another way to get what she needs, Lyralii said. My mother has ruled for 3,000 years, Captain Chun. She has survived wars, rebellions, and the near extinction of our species. She will not let one stubborn human prevent her from achieving her goals. Sarah walked to the viewport, staring out at the Zephyrian fleet that surrounded them. 12 hours to make a decision that would determine the rest of her life. Join the Empire and become a symbol of human Zephyrian cooperation, or refuse and face the consequences of disappointing the most powerful being in the galaxy. But, as she thought about it, Sarah realized that maybe there was a third option. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to give Empress Zara what she needed while still maintaining some semblance of freedom. She just hoped she could figure out what it was before those 12 hours were up. 6 hours remained on Empress Zara's deadline, and Sarah had spent the last 3 pacing the cargo hold of the New Horizon while trying to find a solution that didn't exist. Her crew had offered their opinions. Tom and Elena were inclined to accept the Empress's offer, while Marcus and Lisa favored finding a way to politely decline. But Sarah knew that neither option was really viable. She had just completed her 15th lap around the cargo containers when Lyralii appeared in the doorway, moving with that supernatural quiet that seemed to be natural to her species. "You are troubled," the young princess observed. "That's putting it mildly," Sarah replied, stopping her pacing. "Your mother has basically given me a choice between joining her empire or facing the consequences. I don't like ultimatums." "She does not intend it as an ultimatum," Lyralii said, though her tone suggested she understood why Sarah might see it that way. In Zephyrian culture, when someone performs a great service, refusing the offered reward is considered deeply insulting. It suggests that the service was not performed out of honor, but for some other, lesser reason, like money, or fame, or worse, out of pity. The implication would be that you saved me not because I was worth saving, but because you felt sorry for me. For a member of the royal family, such an insult could not be overlooked. Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. So if I refuse her offer, she'll think I'm insulting her daughter. And empresses probably don't take kindly to people who insult their children. No, Lyralii agreed quietly. They do not. Sarah looked at the young alien, studying those strange eyes that seemed to shift color with her emotions. Lyralii, can I ask you something? Why were you really at that slave auction? You said you were investigating reports of captured Zephyrians, but I get the feeling there's more to it than that. Lyralii was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah thought she might not answer. But then, the princess moved to sit on one of the cargo containers, her small legs swinging back and forth as she considered her words. "My mother loves me," she said finally. "But she also fears for me. For 1,000 years, our people have lived in exile, and during that time, I have been the only child born to the royal line, the only heir to the throne. She keeps me surrounded by guards and advisors, protected in the deepest parts of our fleet where nothing can harm me." "That sounds lonely," Sarah said, moving to sit beside her. "It is. I wanted to do something meaningful, to help our people in some way. So I convinced my tutors to let me study intelligence reports about captured Zephyrians. When we learned about the auction on that trading station, I saw an opportunity to prove myself." "You snuck out," Sarah realized. "You left the fleet without permission." "I took a small scout ship and went to gather information," Lyralii admitted. "I was not supposed to get close to the auction itself. But when I saw how they were treating the prisoners, I could not simply observe. I tried to free them myself, and got captured in the process. Yes, it was not one of my more successful plans." Sarah couldn't help but smile at that. Despite her royal status and mysterious powers, Lyralii was still very much a child in some ways, impulsive, idealistic, and convinced that she could fix problems through sheer determination. It was exactly the kind of thing Sarah might have done at that age. Does your mother know what really happened? Sarah asked. She suspects, but I have not confirmed her suspicions. She is angry enough about my disappearance without knowing that I deliberately put myself in danger. Lyralii, Sarah said gently. What would happen if your mother found out that I knew the truth about how you ended up at that auction? Would that change how she views my rescue of you? The princess looked at her sharply, those color-shifting eyes widening as she understood what Sarah was suggesting. You would not. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone, Sarah said. Your mother needs a hero story for the galactic media. But she also needs to know that her daughter is safe and won't disappear again. If she knew that I had helped you with an unauthorized rescue mission, she would be furious, Lyralii said. At both of us. Captain Chun, my mother is not cruel, but she is intense. If she believed you had endangered me, even accidentally, her gratitude would turn to something much less pleasant. Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her options. None of them were good. But as she thought about the problem, a different approach began to take shape in her mind. Not a solution, exactly, but perhaps a way to change the rules of the game. Lyralii, she said slowly, what if we told your mother the truth? Not about your unauthorized mission, but about what's really happening in the galaxy. About the slave trade, about the other captured Zephyrians, about the fact that your people need more than just a returning empire. They need someone willing to go into the dark places and pull them out. I do not understand. Your mother wants me to join her fleet as a symbol of human Zephyrian cooperation. But what if instead of being a symbol, I actually did something useful? What if I used my ship, my crew, and my knowledge of the underworld to help find and rescue the other Zephyrians who are still out there? Lyralii stared at her, and Sarah could almost see the gears turning behind those luminous eyes. You would become a, what is the human term, freelancer? Working for the Empire, but not bound by its regulations. Something like that. I keep my ship, my crew, and my freedom to operate as I see fit. In return, I use those assets to serve Zephyrian interests. Your mother gets a human ally who can go places her fleets can't, and I get to keep doing what I do best, helping people who need it. It is an interesting proposal, Lyralii said thoughtfully. But my mother would need assurances that you would remain loyal to the Empire's interests, and she would want some way to maintain contact and oversight. What did you have in mind? Lyralii was quiet for a moment, then looked up at Sarah with an expression that was both hopeful and nervous. I could come with you. Absolutely not, Sarah said immediately. Lyralii, you're the heir to the throne of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. I can't take you into the kind of dangerous situations I deal with. But I could be useful, the young princess insisted. I know Zephyrian culture and history. I can identify our people even when they have been disguised or altered. And I have abilities that could be valuable in rescue operations. Sarah thought about the light show Lyralii had put on at the trading station, the way she had frozen 6 armed guards with nothing but her presence. The child clearly had powers that Sarah didn't understand, and she was right that they could be useful. But taking the heir to a galactic empire into combat situations seemed like the kind of decision that could start wars. Your mother would never agree to it, Sarah said. She might, Lyralii said slowly, if the alternative was losing me entirely. What do you mean? Captain Chun, Sarah, you must understand something about Zephyrian succession law. When I reach my majority, which by our standards will be in approximately 50 of your years, I will have the right to choose my own path. I can accept the throne and the responsibilities that come with it, or I can renounce my claim and live as a private citizen. And you're thinking about renouncing it. I am thinking about many things, Lyralii said carefully. My mother has devoted her life to rebuilding our empire, but I sometimes wonder if that empire is what our people truly need. Perhaps what we need instead is to find our place in the larger galactic community, rather than trying to dominate it. Sarah felt a chill as she realized the implications of what Lyralii was suggesting. If the heir to the Zephyrian throne was having doubts about the Empire's future direction, and if Empress Zara suspected those doubts. Your mother doesn't know you feel this way, Sarah said. No, but she is beginning to suspect. My unauthorized mission to help captured Zephyrians was not the first time I have questioned the Empire's isolationist policies. She is concerned about my development. And if she thought that spending time with humans was encouraging those doubts, then she would view humanity as a threat to be eliminated, Lyralii said quietly. Which is why we must be very careful about how we present this proposal. Before Sarah could respond, Marcus's voice came over the ship's intercom. Sarah, we've got an incoming transmission from the flagship. The Empress wants to speak with you. Sarah checked her chronometer. Still 2 hours left on the deadline. Either Zara had changed her mind about the timing, or something else was happening. On my way, she replied, then looked at Lyralii. Are you ready for this? I am ready to try, the princess said. But, Sarah, please remember, my mother has survived for 3,000 years by being willing to do whatever is necessary to protect what she loves. If she believes you are a threat to me or to the Empire, she will not hesitate to act. They made their way to the bridge, where the crew was already assembled around the main display. When the transmission activated, Empress Zara appeared on screen, but her expression was very different from their previous conversation. Gone was the regal composure and imperial authority. In their place was something that looked almost like panic. Captain Shun, Zara said without preamble, I have just received intelligence reports that concern both of us. The Galactic Confederation Council is meeting in emergency session to discuss the return of the Zephyrian Empire. They are not pleased with our emergence from exile. What kind of not pleased? Sarah asked. The kind that involves mobilizing the combined fleets of 12 different species and positioning them along our projected course through Confederation space, Zara replied grimly. It seems that news of my daughter's rescue has been interpreted as the opening move in a Zephyrian expansion campaign. Sarah felt her stomach drop. They think you're invading? They think we are testing their defenses by conducting operations in their territory, Zara corrected. The rescue of Lyralii has been characterized as a military operation designed to gauge Confederation response times and capabilities. That's insane, Marcus said from his position at the navigation console. It was one cargo ship rescuing one child. One cargo ship that somehow evaded station security, extracted a high-value target, and escaped without losses, Zara pointed out. To military analysts, such an operation suggests careful planning and superior intelligence capabilities. So what happens now? Sarah asked. Now, Captain Shun, I find myself in need of your assistance more urgently than I had anticipated. The Confederation has demanded that I return their territory immediately and submit to a formal diplomatic process before being allowed to reclaim any former Zephyrian holdings. They have also requested that the individuals responsible for the military operation at the trading station be turned over for questioning. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. You're going to hand us over? I am going to do no such thing, Zara said firmly. You saved my daughter at considerable personal risk. The Zephyrian Empire does not abandon those who serve it faithfully. But I also cannot afford to start a war with the Confederation over this matter, particularly not when that war would be based on a fundamental misunderstanding. What do you need from us? Sarah asked. I need you to help me prove that your rescue of Lyralii was not a military operation, but rather an act of individual heroism by a human cargo captain who could not stand by and watch injustice occur. I need you to be willing to testify before the Confederation Council and explain exactly what happened and why. Sarah considered this. Speaking before the Confederation Council would put her and her crew in the spotlight of galactic politics, something that most cargo haulers spent their careers trying to avoid. But it might also provide an opportunity to present her own proposal to Empress Zara. Your Majesty, Sarah said, before I agree to anything, I'd like to make a counter-proposal, something that might serve both of our interests. Zara's eyebrows rose slightly. I am listening. You need to prove to the Confederation that the Zephyrian Empire isn't a threat, and I'm willing to bet that part of that proof involves demonstrating that your people can work constructively with other species rather than trying to dominate them. Continue. What if instead of making me a Zephyrian noble, you make me something else? An independent contractor working on behalf of the Empire. Someone who can go places your fleets can't. Work with people who might be suspicious of Imperial representatives, and handle situations that require flexibility. Such as rescuing the other Zephyrians who are still being held in slavery throughout the galaxy. Such as gathering intelligence on threats to Zephyrian interests, such as serving as a liaison between the Empire and various underworld organizations that might be useful allies. Zara was quiet for a long moment, her color-shifting eyes studying Sarah through the transmission. And in return? In return, I keep my ship, my crew, and my autonomy. I work for the Empire, but not in it. And Sarah took a deep breath, knowing this was the risky part. Princess Lyralii comes with me as a cultural advisor and liaison. The silence that followed was so profound that Sarah could hear the hum of the ship's life support systems. Zara's expression had gone completely neutral, which Sarah suspected was more dangerous than open anger. "You wish to take my daughter," the Empress said slowly, "the heir to the Zephyrian throne, into the dangerous underworld situations you have described." "I wish to give her the chance to help her people in a meaningful way," Sarah replied. "And to learn about the galaxy she may someday rule. She can't do that from the protected chambers of the Imperial fleet. And if I refuse?" Sarah looked at Lyralii, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. "Then, Your Majesty, with respect, you may find that your daughter chooses to renounce her claim to the throne when she reaches majority. Because right now, she feels trapped and useless, and those feelings are only going to get stronger as she gets older." Zara's gaze shifted to Lyralii, and Sarah saw something pass between mother and daughter, a moment of understanding that transcended words. The Empress had clearly been aware of her daughter's growing dissatisfaction, and Sarah had just confirmed her worst fears. "Lyralii," Zara said softly, "is this what you want?" The young princess straightened, and for a moment she looked every inch the royal heir she was born to be. "Mother, I want to serve our people, but I want to do so in a way that matters. Captain Chen's proposal would allow me to help rescue captured Zephyrians while also learning about the galaxy beyond our fleet. It would prepare me to rule, if that is my destiny, or to find another path if it is not. And if something happens to you, if you are injured or killed while on one of these missions, then at least I will have died doing something worthwhile," Lyralii said simply, "rather than dying slowly from boredom and isolation." Zara closed her eyes, and for a moment she looked not like an immortal empress, but like any mother facing the inevitable reality that her child was growing up and would soon need to make her own choices. When she opened her eyes again, her expression was resolute. "Captain Chen, your proposal is unconventional, but these are unconventional times. I will agree to your terms, with certain conditions." Sarah felt a surge of relief mixed with terror. She had gotten what she wanted, but she suspected the conditions were going to be significant. "First," Zara continued, "Lyralii will be accompanied by a small security detail of my choosing. They will operate under your command during missions, but they will have standing orders to protect her life above all other considerations." "Acceptable," Sarah said. "Second, you will report to me personally on a regular basis regarding Lyralii's safety and development. Any sign that she is being endangered unnecessarily, and the arrangement ends immediately." "Also acceptable." "Third, and most importantly, you will testify before the Confederation Council as I have requested. You will explain exactly what happened at the trading station and why, and you will make it clear that your actions were those of an individual, not an agent of the Zephyrian Empire." "I'll tell the truth," Sarah promised. "That's all I can do." "That," Zara said, "may be all that is required." "Very well, Captain Chen. We have an agreement. I will transmit the formal details to your ship within the hour, along with information about the Confederation Council hearing. I trust you will not make me regret this decision." "I'll do my best to make sure you don't," Sarah replied. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the New Horizon in stunned silence. Sarah looked around at her crew, all of whom were staring at her with expressions ranging from admiration to complete bewilderment. "So," Marcus said finally, "let me make sure I understand this. We just went from being wanted fugitives to being official contractors for one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. And our first assignment is to testify before the Confederation Council, which could potentially prevent or start an interstellar war." "That's about the size of it," Sarah confirmed. "And we're taking the Imperial heir with us on dangerous rescue missions." "Apparently." "Sarah," Elena said slowly, "I've been your medic for 3 years, and I've seen you make some crazy decisions. But this might be the craziest yet. Probably, Sarah agreed. But it's also the right decision. We get to keep our freedom and our ship, while also helping people who desperately need it. And maybe, if we're really lucky, we can prevent a war in the process. She looked at Lyralii, who was watching the conversation with those luminous eyes that seemed to hold depths of wisdom far beyond her apparent age. Are you ready for this, princess? Because once we start down this path, there's no going back. Lyralii smiled, and for the first time since Sarah had met her, the expression reached all the way to her eyes. Captain Chun, I have been ready for this my entire life. I just didn't know it until now. Then, let's go save the galaxy, Sarah said, starting with a little diplomatic mission to the Confederation Council. As the New Horizon began its journey toward Confederation space, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a decision that would change not only her own life, but the entire balance of power in the galaxy. She just hoped it would change things for the better. The Confederation Council chambers on Station Unity were the most impressive structure Sarah had ever seen. Built in the shape of a vast sphere suspended in the center of the station, the chambers could accommodate representatives from over 200 different species, each with their own environmental requirements and cultural preferences. The engineering required to make such a space functional was staggering. Sarah stood in the preparation room adjacent to the main chamber, adjusting her dress uniform for the third time in 10 minutes. She had testified before military tribunals during her Defense Force years, but this was different. The entire galaxy would be watching this session, and her words could determine whether the Zephyrian Empire's return sparked a new golden age of cooperation or the deadliest war in galactic history. You're nervous, Lyralii observed from her position near the room's single viewport. The young princess wore formal Zephyrian robes that seemed to be made from captured starlight, and she carried herself with a poise that made her look older than her years. Terrified would be more accurate, Sarah admitted. I keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. It will not go wrong, came a new voice from the doorway. Sarah turned to see Zura entering the preparation room, flanked by two of her royal guards. The Empress wore similar robes to her daughter, but where Lyralii's outfit spoke of youth and potential, Zara's proclaimed ancient authority and power that could reshape worlds. Your Majesty, Sarah said, inclining her head respectfully. I didn't expect you to attend the hearing personally. When my empire's future hangs in the balance, I attend personally, Zara replied. Besides, I wish to speak with you before you testify. There are complications that have arisen since we last spoke. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. What kind of complications? Intelligence from within the Confederation suggests that not all species are equally concerned about the Zephyrian return. Several of the more militaristic races view our emergence as an opportunity rather than a threat. An opportunity for what? To test their own military capabilities against a technologically superior opponent, Zara explained. There are factions within the Korthak military collective and the Thraxian war clans who believe that defeating the Zephyrian Empire would establish them as the galaxy's dominant powers. Sarah processed this information with growing alarm. So even if we convince the Council that you're not a threat, there are still groups that want to fight you anyway. Precisely, which means that your testimony must accomplish more than simply clearing up a misunderstanding. It must provide an alternative narrative, a story that makes cooperation with the Zephyrian Empire more appealing than conflict. No pressure, Sarah muttered. Indeed, Zara said with what might have been the ghost of a smile. But I have confidence in your abilities, Captain Chun. After all, you have already achieved something that most military experts considered impossible, which is, you rescued my daughter from one of the most heavily fortified trading stations in the Outer Rim using nothing but a cargo ship, a handful of crew members, and remarkable audacity. If you can accomplish that, I believe you can handle a room full of politicians. Before Sarah could respond, a soft chime indicated that the council session was about to begin. A protocol droid appeared in the doorway, its mechanical voice announcing, Captain Sarah Chun, you are requested to appear before the Confederation Council for formal testimony regarding Incident Classification Zeta-77 Alpha. Incident Classification Zeta-77 Alpha? Sarah asked. The rescue of Princess Lyralii, Zara explained. The Confederation classifies all potential military operations with alphanumeric codes. The fact that they assigned your rescue mission such a designation tells us everything we need to know about how they view the situation. Sarah took a deep breath, checking her uniform one final time. Wish me luck, Captain Chun, Lyralii said suddenly, stepping forward to take Sarah's hands in her own. Remember what I told you about humans having impossible hope. Sometimes, impossible hope is exactly what the galaxy needs. Sarah squeezed the young princess's hands gently, then followed the protocol droid toward the council chambers. As they walked through the corridor leading to the main entrance, she could see news crews from dozens of different media outlets setting up their equipment. This session would be broadcast live across the galaxy, reaching billions of viewers on thousands of worlds. The doors to the council chambers opened with a soft hiss, and Sarah stepped into organized chaos. The spherical chamber was filled with representatives from every major species in the Confederation, their various forms adapted to the unique environmental zones built into the structure. Aquatic species floated in specialized tanks, while gas breathers occupied pressurized sections that glowed with different colored atmospheres. At the center of the sphere was a small platform where Sarah would deliver her testimony, surrounded by holographic displays that would translate her words into hundreds of different languages and communication methods. The setup was designed to ensure that every species could understand what was being said, regardless of their biological or cultural differences. Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth vessel New Horizon, announced the council speaker, a dignified Centaurian whose voice carried throughout the chamber via advanced acoustic systems. You stand before the Confederation Council to provide testimony regarding recent events in Outer Rim Sector 12. Please state your name and position for the record. Sarah stepped onto the central platform, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. Representatives from species she had never seen before stared down at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to outright hostility. My name is Captain Sarah Chun, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. I am the commander of the independent cargo vessel New Horizon, registry number EDF 2847, operating under a standard merchant's license issued by the Earth Trade Authority. Captain Chun, the speaker continued, you are here to provide testimony regarding events that occurred at Trading Station Zirian 7 approximately 1 standard week ago. In your own words, please describe what happened. Sarah had rehearsed this moment dozens of times during the journey to Station Unity, but standing in the actual chamber was different from practicing in her ship's cargo hold. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of galactic politics pressing down on every word she spoke. I was delivering medical supplies to the outer colonies when my ship stopped at Trading Station Zirian 7 for routine maintenance, she began. During our layover, I became aware of a slave auction taking place in the station's commercial district. A ripple of murmurs went through the chamber. Slavery was officially banned by Confederation law, but everyone knew it still existed in the Outer Rim territories where enforcement was difficult and profits were high. I observed the auction for several minutes, Sarah continued, and noticed a child among the prisoners, a young female who appeared to be in distress. I made the decision to intervene. Captain Chun interrupted a representative from the Altarian delegation, his silver scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. Are you suggesting that you conducted a military operation to extract this child based solely on emotional impulse? I'm suggesting that I saw a child in danger and acted to help her, Sarah replied firmly. Nothing more, nothing less. But you must have known the risks, pressed another representative, this one from the Korthak Military Collective. The reptilian warrior's voice carried a note of skepticism that was unmistakable. Trading Station Zirian 7 is heavily defended. A single cargo ship should not have been able to penetrate their security. I didn't penetrate anything, Sarah said. I used maintenance shafts and service corridors, areas that weren't being actively monitored. The station's security was focused on preventing external attacks, not on monitoring their own infrastructure. And you accomplished this extraction alone? Asked a representative from the Thraxian delegation. My crew provided support, but yes, I conducted the actual rescue operation by myself. It wasn't a military operation. It was one person trying to help another person in trouble. Captain Chun, The speaker interjected. Our intelligence reports suggest that the child you rescued was Princess Lorelei Starweaver, heir to the Zephyrian throne. Are you claiming that you were unaware of her identity? This was the moment Sarah had been dreading. The truth was that she had suspected Lorelei might be someone important based on her behavior and the way other slaves deferred to her. But admitting that could be interpreted as proof that the rescue had been planned in advance. At the time of the rescue, I knew only that she was a young Zephyrian being sold into slavery, Sarah said carefully. I learned her true identity later, after we had already escaped the station. How convenient, muttered the Korthak representative. Representative Thrax, the speaker warned, you will maintain proper decorum during this testimony. Sarah took a breath and decided to take a risk. Representatives of the council, I understand your suspicion. The rescue of Princess Lorelei was indeed remarkable, and I can see how it might appear to be part of some larger conspiracy. But I'd like to ask you a question. The chamber fell silent. It was highly unusual for someone giving testimony to question the council directly. If this had been a military operation, Sarah continued, if the Zephyrian Empire had wanted to extract their princess from that trading station, do you really think they would have sent a single human cargo captain to do it? She gestured toward the viewing gallery where Empress Zara sat with her retinue. Empress Zara commands fleets that could vaporize that trading station from a dozen light years away. She has ships that could have teleported directly into the auction chamber and extracted Princess Lorelei without firing a shot. If the Zephyrian Empire had wanted to conduct a military operation, why would they need me? The logic of this argument was clearly having an impact on the assembled representatives. Sarah could see the expressions on their faces changing as they considered her words. The truth is, Sarah continued, I was in the right place at the right time to help someone who needed help. That's all. There was no grand conspiracy, no military planning, no imperial operation. Just a human who couldn't stand by and watch a child be sold into slavery. Captain Shun, came a new voice from the Regelian delegation. Assuming we accept your account of events, can you explain why the Zephyrian Empire has chosen to emerge from exile at this particular moment? The timing seems coincidental. Sarah looked toward the viewing gallery where Zara sat. This wasn't her question to answer, but she could see the Empress give her the slightest of nods. That's not really my area of expertise, Sarah said, but I can tell you what I've learned since meeting Princess Lorelei and Empress Zara. The Zephyrian Empire isn't emerging from exile to conquer or dominate anyone. They're coming back because their people, Zephyrians who were scattered across the galaxy during their exile, are being hunted and enslaved by criminal organizations who see them as valuable commodities. This caused another ripple of murmurs through the chamber. The revelation that Zephyrians were being systematically hunted was news to many of the council members. According to Princess Lorelei, Sarah continued, there are dozens, possibly hundreds of her people being held in slavery throughout the galaxy. The Empress isn't planning an invasion. She's planning a rescue operation. The timing of her emergence has nothing to do with military conquest, and everything to do with the fact that her people are suffering and need help. And you know this how? Asked the Altarian representative. Because she's asked me to help, Sarah said simply. The Zephyrian Empire has offered me a contract to assist in locating and rescuing captured Zephyrians throughout the galaxy. It's the kind of work that requires someone who can operate in the underworld, who can go places that Imperial fleets can't go. This statement caused a stir throughout the chamber. The idea that the returning Zephyrian Empire was hiring human contractors for rescue operations rather than preparing for war was clearly not what the council had expected to hear. Captain Shun, the speaker said, are you suggesting that the Zephyrian Empire intends to work within existing galactic law and institutions rather than attempting to reclaim their former territories by force? Sarah looked up at Empress Zara again, and this time the regal alien stood up in the viewing gallery. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber as she spoke for the first time during the session. Honored representatives, Zara said, her words automatically translated into dozens of languages. If I may address the council directly, I believe I can clarify the Empire's intentions. The speaker consulted with several other council members before responding. Empress Zara Starweaver, you are recognized by the council. Please proceed. Zara moved to a position where all the representatives could see her clearly. Despite the formal setting, her presence seemed to fill the chamber with an aura of ancient authority and cosmic power. Esteemed members of the Galactic Confederation, she began, I stand before you not as a conqueror returning to claim stolen territory, but as a mother seeking justice for her scattered children. For 1,000 years, my people have lived in exile at the edge of known space, watching from afar as the galaxy moved on without us. Her voice carried a weight of centuries, of loss and hope and determination that seemed to resonate through the very structure of the station. We could have returned at any time during those 1,000 years, Zara continued. Our technology remained superior to most galactic civilizations. Our fleets were intact, our power undiminished. If we had wanted to reclaim our former empire by force, we could have done so generations ago. Then, why return now? Asked the Thraxian representative. Because now, for the first time in a millennium, we have hope, Zara replied, her gaze finding Sarah on the testimony platform. Hope that the galaxy has evolved enough, grown enough in wisdom and compassion to accept the Zephyrian people not as